My name is Tom Warchal, and I am a scale modeler with the IPMS Patriots chapter. I like to do this stuff for fun, just as everybody else does. A couple of things real quick. I can put some cards and pens on the chairs. If you have any questions, write your questions down, and we'll do a question and answer session towards the end. I'll be more than happy to answer whatever questions you have. If you want to learn something more in depth than just the basics, I'm here. I can also go over, give you my email address and things like that. If you have something for questions later on. So my first question is, who was intimidated by actually picking up an airbrush and spraying it or using it in display?
Intimidated, but unsure.
Yeah. Unsure?
That's a good one.
Okay. Yeah. Very good. Out of you guys, who's actually picked up that airbrush? Who's actually had some time? Okay. All right, not too bad. Not too bad. So this class today is an introduction to the basics of airbrushing for beginners. So what we're going to cover the basic tools and movements that you're going to need to get into airbrushing, basic paint types, how to mix your paint, how to sample your paint, right up to painting and being comfortable with painting, trying different techniques and things as you move along. First thing I would like to do is go over my story so that you're comfortable with me and with your journey kind of at the same time. So several years ago, I got to a point with hand brushing and the old rattle cans. We're kind of getting tired of them. Rattle cans, you waste a ton of paint with rattle cans. Hand brushing, I wasn't great. So airbrushing looked like the next step for me in the journey. So I started doing some research. Did a lot of research on YouTube. I talked to other modelers, scale modelers in the clubs and outside of the club, and came up with what I thought I needed to start off with. So I ended up coming up and finding a basic master airbrush compressor. It ended up coming with 3 different airbrushes. It came with cleaning sticks to clean out the actual airbrush itself. It came with a color wheel, a hose, and really crappy instructions. The Master makes some of the most garbage instructions. You don't really need. Again, doing my research, I also came across a YouTube video where you could actually spend $60, go to Home Depot, buy all the parts and pieces to create a portable airbrush. So with that in mind, I purchased my setup for my airbrush and compressor. I bought all the parts for this portable spray booth.
Could you speak up a little bit?
Yeah.
It's kind of noisy.
Yeah, absolutely. So I went to Home Depot, I picked up all the parts for the portable airbrush. Portable airbrush, portable spray booth. Put that together. I purchased some paint and thinner, and already having some background with paint and thinner, I was pretty comfortable with actually mixing and whatnot. So I got everything together, all set to go, looking really good, and then the fear of failing hit me hard. So from that point, now I know where you guys are coming from, it took me a year, and watching countless other videos of guys just airbrushing effortlessly, to really get up the courage to just sit down and pick up my airbrush and my setup and actually use it. No longer letting it be this trophy sitting on my bench, taking up half my bench space. So from there, I sat down literally for, I think it was 3 or 4 hours my first time. I grabbed some cardboard. I grabbed some sprues. I grabbed some extra parts and pieces from kits that I didn't use, and I started testing the airbrush out. I threw some paint in it, and I started trying to figure out how the trigger would work, how to actuate air, how to shoot the paint out of it. Messed around with the air ratios to try and figure out what was working, how far away I needed to spray so that it just didn't blow up, look like a big splotch all over the place. Once I kind of got that regulated in, and I started painting lines. And and I started drawing dots, smiley faces, and letters, and just really kind of getting comfortable with moving the airbrush around, kind of actuating it, pulling that trigger back and forth to see what happens when you blast the paint out completely or you kind of move it down a little bit. So what I ended up finding after those several hours of working on this, I found, first off, it was actually pretty comfortable to work with. It was not as difficult as you stick in your mind and you think it actually is. It's comfortable to do. It's actually pretty relaxing. It's an awesome way to pass your time when you're down there modeling. If you've got several models going, have one that you're airbrushing, letting it dry, working on another one. I mean, I'm sure they'll do that anyways. I know I probably have 5 or 6 different stages of different things going on all at the same time. So now that I kind of got past that being afraid, it's ready to go. And I started painting my own kits. So the very first kit that I painted after testing, which probably took me a couple of weeks after, is on that table. And I'm gonna have you guys guess at some point which one it is. So that'll be a quiz for you guys later on. So I will be quizzing you. Now, the first thing you're gonna wanna really know about.
Did you mention what style of paint you were using? Acrylic or lacquer or enamel?
There's a card on the table for that kind of question. If you want to write down your questions till the end, that would be great. I have a lot of material to cover, but I am going to cover the paints, the types of paints, the thinners, as well as the cleaners for those. So that's part of your introduction as well today. So the first thing you're going to want to talk about are your basic types of airbrushes. There's 3 common airbrushes that we use in our hobby, and there are other styles aside from what we normally use. The first type of airbrush that you'll see in our hobby, which is probably the least commonly used, is what's called a single stage gravity feed airbrush. And with a single stage, I don't have one with me, but a single stage airbrush looks just like this, but this whole back end is pretty much not even there. It's just a trigger. And what you do with that airbrush, you literally just pull back the trigger and it just shoots paint all over the place. You have very little control with it. You end up having to really figure out how to meter your air, which we'll get into. But the control with that type of airbrush is very minimal. The second type of airbrush, which is probably the most common with most scale modelers, is this guy right here. This is called a double action gravity feed airbrush. With the double action gravity feed airbrush, you have 2 motions. So the first action, the button on top of your trigger, when you push that down, that actually releases air. So air starts shooting through the nozzle and the tip here. Then when you start pulling this trigger back, the further back you pull it, the more paint comes out of your airbrush. So having the double action style airbrush gives you a lot more control with how much paint you're actually spraying out of the unit at any given time. And there are other things you can do later on once you're really comfortable, but this is your first line of defense of really metering what's coming out and maintaining a good finish on your work. Okay, I'm trying. Sorry, man. I don't have a PA, I guess. The third type of airbrush is a trigger style airbrush. This one I got pretty recently with the deal with a dual stage or a 2-stage trigger style airbrush with a gravity feed. Is the advantage is you got a big hand. The trigger style works really well for bigger hands. The other advantage with this style is if you have issues with your hands cramping or your arthritis issues, which does happen over time, this helps alleviate that because of the way you're actually holding it. So it's a bit more of a, what some people would call a natural grip on that versus holding this way and metering everything with your finger. Yes. The other actuation with this is the trigger itself has what's called 2 phases. So with the first phase, when you pull down through your first phase, it ends up coming to almost a stop point. But that first phase is where the air is actually coming out of your airbrush. When you pull past that, and you'll feel some extra tension, that's the second phase on this trigger. That's when you start releasing paint. The further back you pull this trigger, the more paint is actually going to come out of it. And again, when you sit down for the first time and you start figuring these things out and you're playing with these triggers, you'll start to figure out real quickly where your favorite spot is when you're spraying whatever piece of work you're spraying on, or whatever colors you're spraying. Next progression in what you need to know is where your air is coming from. Not just blowing into the end of this thing, you'll end up turning blue. Not a good look. So there are a couple of basic style compressors. The first style of compressor is what's called a tankless compressor. It's just a straight up air compressor. Doesn't have a storage tank, so it ends up running consistently. This guy right here, this is the guy that I use in my shop. This unit here is an air compressor with a storage tank. It stores a lot of air and it gives you a lot of extended spray time. As I'll go over next. Now, when you're looking for a compressor, there are certain features that you need to have on a compressor. If they don't have those features, keep looking. But the first feature that you want to make sure any of your compressors has is this air valve. There's a metering air valve here where you can adjust your PSI or what's called bars, depending on what terminology you're familiar with. But you can adjust your air pressure here that's going into your airbrush. And that plays a big key in what you're doing when you're actually airbrushing. The second thing that your compressor should have is this lovely looking clear tank. This is what's called a water separator. Now, when a compressor is creating the air pressure and pushing that through your air hose, it's also taking condensation, aka water. It's going to push that through your air hose as well. If you don't have a way to remove that water, it's going to shoot all over your kit. It's going to ruin the work that you're doing. You're going to get frustrated. You probably not want to pick this thing up again. This little guy also has a valve on the bottom. So when you see water actually build up in here, while this guy is on, when you press that, the pressure that this unit makes will actually shoot all that excess water out of this tank. If there's water in there, it's a good thing. If you see zero water in here and your finish is looking kind of funky, you probably have a problem with this guy. But generally, you don't usually have an issue with that. The next thing that you're going to want to make sure that you have is an on-off switch. I mean, that's kind of, you don't have to really say that, right? It doesn't have an on-off switch. It's kind of a pain in the butt. Unplugging it and plugging it, unplugging it and plugging it. Don't go there. Not worth it. One other feature is what's called an auto shut-off. And both of these units have it. This just happens to be this little piece here. But what an auto shut-off does, when you stop spraying your airbrush, it will shut the motor off and give it a chance to cool. It does that with either of these. The other thing that the auto shut-off does with this tank style is when your tank is actually full of air, it will actually shut the motor off. It will allow the motor to kind of sit there, cool down, and just kind of hang out until your air pressure drops below a certain point that your system is actually designed for. That also reduces your run cycle. Reducing your run cycle by having that air tank does a couple of things. One, it's a lot quieter in your shop when you're airbrushing. Number two, it extends the life of your compressor. And the the other thing that is pretty quiet, right? For the most part. And the other thing that switch does is once your air pressure drops, when you pull the trigger on this little guy here, it allows the motor to kick back on. Now, by having the tank, you're also going to reduce two things. You're reducing the stress on the motor. You're also reducing air drop. So when you're in long spray sessions, and this guy is really heating up, or especially this guy without the tank, this guy will start to get really warm. The warmer this gets, the more prone it's called to, the more prone you are to have an issue called air drop with your air pressure, where your air pressure coming out of your tip actually starts to creep down, which can make painting a little bit harder when after you've gotten into a groove. Last thing you want is that air pressure just start kicking off on you. So the advantage of the tank style really prevents that long term, and you have less wear and tear on this unit. Last but not least, with your hoses, your airbrushes generally are an 1/8" hose. Most of your air compressors are going to be 1/8" anyways. Make sure it has an 1/8" hose so you don't have to worry about getting an additional adapter, taping it the whole 9 yards to get it to actually made up with your airbrush. Okay, so we've hit kind of basics on these guys. Yes. Simple basics on these guys. Now you need ventilation. You need a way to move out your fumes, your paint overspray, kind of saving your lungs a little bit here and there, although some guys like to just free ball it, so to speak, and not cover your mouth or whatever. Couple of ways to do that. First way is with this little unit here, which this is part of our raffle today. This guy and this guy, these guys are coming into combination in our raffles today, our premium raffles. So it's kind of a good way to show them, kind of demonstrate them a little bit. This is what's called a portable air booth. And what this is designed for, when you're spraying, it's going to take your fumes, it's going to take your paint overspray, it's going to suck them out of the spray booth, kind of floating around in the house, and it's going to shoot them outside. So you want to make sure that you are near some type of external ventilation or outside, if at all possible. Everybody has different situations. You know, if you're in an apartment, that might be a little harder. You know, understandable. There are other ways around that. The second kind of way to really vent out is kind of a little archaic. I've seen a lot of guys do it. They'll crack open a window wide open. They'll drop a box fan in it, and they'll just spray right through the box fan as you go. So, third way is literally just going outside and airbrushing outside. Weather permitting though. If the temperature varies, if it's a high humidity day, if it's windy, you're probably going to have more issues than you are successes with that. So really trying to give yourself a controlled area in a workspace is going to be your best bet. So something like this, where this guy gives you a work light, you've got a bright work light to work with. You want to make sure that you have a good light source above you and around you, like this guy does. Or get up some really nice LED lamps or high spectrum lamps while you're in your space, with or without this kind of guy. This guy, as you inside, there's a blue kind of mesh in there, or a blue filter. That's an overspray or a paint filter that catches a lot of particles, catches a lot of dust. Yeah, this one's small because it's a portable. Yeah, mine at home is like that. So. I don't play with the little guys anymore. I used to. You get your work light. You've got this one has a nice filter in it. This one also comes with an expandable hose, and it's got a connector that you can stick right underneath your window, kind of close your window down, and you can vent outside as you're going with this guy. Not too loud. I'll just turn it on. You might not be able to hear it back there. But it's not an awful sound. It's not super, super loud. Everybody knows, but- So that's basic spray roof. Kind of simple. The last thing is in your workspace. Make sure you have plenty of space for your arms. You want to make sure your arms are comfortable, or if you're cooped up for a little while, you want to be able to just kind of give yourself a break. Give your chest a break, give your arms a break, or give your hand a break, whichever. Now, airbrushes, compressors, ventilation, so you can keep the house from stinking. Next thing is basic safety, and I can't stress basic safety enough. There are a few things that you want to do. Very first thing is a question. Who thinks your lungs were designed to be painted? Thank you for no showing hands. I appreciate that. They're not. But you need to protect your lungs. And there are 3 ways to do that. First off is what's called the King N95 style filter that you can put over your mouth. I've got a couple of versions of that, kind of a standard. This one's more of a form-fitted with a one-way valve, so you can actually breathe. What these will do is they'll help prevent some of the paint particles from coming in. They'll prevent some of the dust from coming into your lungs. They're not great about your cleaning chemicals, your thinners, anything that's caustic or harsh. These are not designed for that. So primarily, I would recommend these for water-based and maybe some acrylic-based paints. If you're doing anything other than that, if you're doing enamels, if you're doing lacquers, if you're doing oils, then you should really consider this guy right here. This is what's called a NIOSH approved respirator, and it has replaceable filters on it. So once these filters are kind of toast, you go out, get another set of filters, replace them, and go. These guys will filter out pretty much any chemicals that we're going to use as scale modelists. It's also going to filter out any of your overspray and obviously dust. There's no way for dust to get through these at all. The other cool thing with this, compared to this, these tend to be uncomfortable, and sometimes they won't form around your face and give you a good seal. This guy will. It's got a nice rubbery grommet inside, and it's got plenty of adjustments. This guy pops over your head. You can adjust where it sits on your head. You can adjust how far back it is around your neck. You can make a really nice, comfortable fit with this. This is going to protect you from all of your caustic chemicals, your thinners, your cleaners, your lacquer paints, enamels, pretty much anything else you can throw at.
The other nice thing about that is lots of people stay with it.
Correct. Yes, that's huge. Thank you. Now, lungs are good. Let's talk about your hands. So your hands are always going to be in the way of whatever you're spraying, right? You kind of can't. You're not spraying with your toes. You're not really spraying with tongs or whatnot to hold your parts for the most part. But what you want to do is prevent those chemicals and that paint from getting onto your hands. They can actually create some issues. And if you end up having allergies with some of that, you can really go down an awful path. There are 3 types of gloves that you can go with. I don't have all 3 with me here today, but the first style is what's called a vinyl glove. It's a pretty much inexpensive medical glove. It's also the typical lunch lady glove, if you understand my meaning on that. These gloves are okay. They don't generally form fit on your hands very well, so they're not super comfortable. And in some cases, there will be pieces that kind of flap around that could get in the way of your work or what you're trying to do. These are good for water-based paints primarily. I would not use these for lacquers. I would not use these for acrylic enamels or their cleaners or their thinners for the most part. They will tend to break these down or melt these. They'll actually you could actually melt the fingers together on this with some of that stuff. So if you're doing water-based, great. These are fine, they're cheap, disposable, perfect. The next style is what's called a latex disposable glove. Latex disposable glove is a much better option than your vinyl gloves. It's going to give you the protection that you need with most caustic chemicals. But one drawback with latex is a lot of people have allergies, or they can gain a lot of skin irritation from latex gloves. So again, not a bad option, but if you have sensitive skin or if you have a latex allergy, your next bet is going to be nitriles. Nitriles tend to be hypoallergenic. They don't have latex-based materials in them. These are probably the best all-around glove. They will also protect you against any chemicals or any paints, again, that we use for scale modeling. A little more expensive than the other two, but definitely worth their weight in gold in protecting your hands. The last thing with protection are your eyes. I did not bring my goggles. I forgot to throw them in the box. Not a big deal at this point. My goggles cover over my glasses. But I would recommend any type of safety glasses that you feel comfortable with, or any type of goggle that covers over your glasses so you can still see what you're doing. If you are getting something like that, make sure it's a fog-free style unit. Otherwise, you're just going to fog up, and I'm not wearing these. So there's a wide range. You can spend $2 on a pair. You can spend $50 on a pair. You do whatever works for you when it comes to that. All right, so got kind of all the super hardware out of the way. Got yourself protected. Next section is we're starting to kind of get into some of the cooler stuff. So we're going to touch on paints a little bit. And I've got several different styles here. We have your typical water-based paints. We also have your acrylic enamels, which are for slightly more advanced artists. We also have lacquers, which when you kind of get through the progression, as you become a lot more experienced, lacquers start to become kind of a common thing for you. It's a great way to go. Then we also have enamels, which are used mainly by your intermediate and your advanced users. Each one of these types of paint has your advantages, disadvantages. Your water-based paints, one, they're easy to clean up. You can clean them with distilled water. You can also clean them with water-based airbrush cleaners. That's a thinner, sorry. Airbrush cleaner. They tend to dry pretty quickly. The major drawback. Can you hold questions till after? I might cover your question before then. The main drawback with water-based paints is they're soft and they tend to scratch a lot easier than the rest of it. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're using water-based. The other cool thing with water-based is you have a wide range. You have your primers. I just happen to have Mech Primer, Steinel Res. These two are really good primers for water-based. I've got what's called base colors. So all the colors that you're actually going to paint your kit. And then above and beyond that, there's finishes or clear coats, which is what you use to cover over and protect all of your work. And with the finishes on these guys, you can actually kind of give your model kit a little more of a patina, or kind of give it more of that feel that you're trying to achieve with it. The next style paint, a little more advanced, are going to be your acrylic enamels. Acrylic enamels are a nice step up. They are easy to clean. I feel they're actually easier to clean than water-based because they're using more of a solvent-based cleaner. To me, an airbrush cleaner. With these guys here, they spray really nicely. They cover really well. And they also give you a lot more scratch resistance than you will get with your water-based paints. Now, they will still scratch. It just takes a little bit more to scratch them. They tend to dry a little bit harder, which is nice. They're generally dry to the touch, within about half an hour to an hour, and they will fully cure or fully dry and harden within 24 to 48 hours, depending on other various factors in your workspace. When we graduate to lacquer paints again are for primarily more advanced users, or if you're looking to get some more advanced looks and paint styles, lacquers are a great way to go. They tend to be the most expensive. They deal with harsh chemicals, harsh cleaners. They are commonly referred to as hot paint. If you've ever heard that term, it's generally lacquer paints. And that hot is more of the chemical reaction in the lacquer, because it depends on a chemical reaction to dry, to harden, to do its thing, to give you all the benefits that you get out of a lacquer-based paint. With the lacquer-based paint, you can get a really tough surface. It's extremely scratch resistant for the most part. It's great for models that have articulation, or models that have a ton of small parts, and you don't want to scratch other things as you're attaching parts to your kit. Lacquer is another nice way to go. And then we also have these lovely little guys here, enamels. A lot of people will use the enamels for smaller details. Enamels tend to be more of an oil-based paint. They do use caustic cleaners, and they use caustic thinners as well, so definitely harsher than obviously the water-based. They will give you a really nice hard finish, but only after they dry completely. Unfortunately with enamels, they have a long dry time. They'll be dry to the touch 5 to 12 hours in some cases, depending on what you're spraying and how thick you are. Enamels can be extremely finicky until they are completely dried through. For a complete cure and complete dry on enamels, it could take up to 5 days to get that complete. Once it is completely dried through, you get a rock solid finish with enamels. A lot of modelers won't spray an entire model with that type because it takes too long in most of our minds. And who wants to wait 5 days before you can start your final assembly or whatever the next phase is you need to do with that model kit? Like finish coats. These all have finish coats. Your enamels, acrylic enamels, a wide variety. I've got them in some little shaker bottles and things, already pre-thinned out. Same thing with your lacquers. I've got several different samples of clears up here. I also have what's called a pink clear. It kind of looks more fuchsia-y, but it does spray pink. And really after that are just these guys. Who knows and loves these guys? Right? These are great. This is how I started, and really kind of found out they waste a ton of paint. You can't control them, and you get more runs and tooling with these guys if you're not paying attention than anything else. So kind of the next progression here, kind of understanding the paint basics and the basic cleaning, is really how do you mix it? Why do you mix it? Well, the why to mixing these with thinner is you want to make sure the consistency of your paint is at a point where it will flow into your airbrush and will come out of your airbrush successfully, thereby giving you the finish that you're looking for. Sorry, Pip. So there are a couple of guidelines with actually thinning your paints. Each one of these has their own thinner. We have your water-based thinners for your water-based paints. We have acrylic enamel thinners, the X20A for your Tamiya's. With your lacquers, there are several different types of thinners. I have 3 different types for the 3 different brands I generally work with. Rule of thumb with your thinners, go by the manufacturer's suggested type and brand and ratio to start with when you're beginning. You will never go wrong with that. They purposely formulate their products to work with each other successfully, and they will recommend a basic ratio for you to start with. Now, kind of breaking that rule a little bit, I have two ratios that I use consistently that have worked out very well for me, and it keeps it kind of simple. First ratio I generally use is what's called 1 part paint to 1.5 parts thinner. So think of 1 ml of paint and mix it with 1.5 mLs of thinner. You generally have a pretty good mix. Second mix that I use is 1 part paint to 2 parts thinner. So generally when I'm doing clear coats or clear colors, I will go with a 1 part paint, 2 parts thinner. Those two ratios, and I've played around over my time, those two ratios work for me probably 98% of the time. Very rarely have an issue with that ratio working for me. So just kind of keep that in mind. When you're mixing the paints, you also have to mix them into something, right? You can't just throw your thinner into this bottle right here. There's not enough room. There'll never be. So what you can do, you can buy empty containers. There are several companies that make them. I've got one of the little glass jars here. I also have some PET graduated squeeze bottles, which are my favorite go-to now for several reasons. One, it's easy to mix your ratios because it's graduated on the side. There's plenty of room on the top to pour all your paint into. And you hear the rattling around on it. Those are stainless steel agitator balls, which are great after you mix your paint. After you let it sit for a while, pick it up, shake that guy up for a minute or two, you're back in business. You're not throwing it on a shaker, you're not trying to mix it, you're not trying to go through this thicker goop to try and get it ready to go back through your airbrush. Keep it ready and on hand. Now, to get your paint into these guys, these little lovely, these pipettes right here, you can buy them by the gross on Amazon. Literally 500 to a bag. I think it's 20 bucks. You'll have them for years. These are graduated. These particular ones are graduated in milliliters, and it makes it easier for you to go in and say, okay, I'm going to pull 2 milliliters of this out, pour it into my graduated bottle, take a separate pipette, go into your thinner, take out your 1.5 times your thinner, pour that into your bottle, and you can stir it up with your frothers, commonly referred to as a frother, or to me a paint stirrer, little stainless steel paint stirrers. Or if you want to get fancy, you just get a paint shaker. Strap it on, turn the thing on, bounces around like crazy, mixes up your paint, you're good to go.
Just take the bottle and shake it.
Yeah, see, there you go. Yeah, and it's done. But that's why the balls, right? You can't. Anybody familiar with AK? They make a really decent stainless steel ball. They do not rust. I have never had an issue with these rusting. I've heard rusting in other brands. I've stuck with these guys. No advertising.
Amazon could make it for nail painting. You could like for balls, like for creating nail paints.
The ceramic ones or the?
The stainless steel.
Yep.
Quarter inch one, big enough so when we pop the boot, you put in the jar, going for a walk for 3 hours.
That's awesome. I love it. Warms it up too. Gets it ready, right?
Gives me exercise.
So now that you've got kind of the basic idea of how to mix your paint, you're going to come to the phase where, great, my paint's mixed. What's it look like? How does it look? So, see these lovely cups of spoons. So I have a massive collection of test spoons. I tested all my paints, all my mousses, virtually anything I do with my airbrush, spraying through meshes, tape, you name it, onto simple dollar store spoons. Literally, you spend a buck. It's $1.25 now for a box of 100, and you've got spoons for days. You've got testing implements for days. Don't forget, you got your cardboard. You've got all your loose extra pieces from other kits and screws and whatnot. But that's where you really figure out what you just mixed, what it's going to look like. So now that that's kind of out of the way. Let's see. Okay. Time for kind of the fun stuff, really. So, you know how to mix. You have a good idea of how to test. Next thing you need to do, if you haven't already done this, is set up your compressor and airbrush. Pretty simple. Make sure you actually plug it in first, unlike what I just did. And with your airbrush, first thing you're going to do is you're going to attach the hose. If you don't attach the hose, you're not spraying. It doesn't work. It's not good. The hose literally just screws on. You don't have to crank this with a wrench. And I would actually say do not. But get it finger tight and then crank it a little bit further. There is a seal inside here, or an O-ring, that will help create that contact. The last thing you want to do is crush that thing, because then you're going to get nailed. So you got the airbrush, you got the hose attached to your compressor. Your airbrush screws on to the other end, and again, kind of get that hand tight, and then crank it just a little bit more, because you don't want to over tighten it. You don't want to crush the washer, and you certainly don't want to ruin the threads on your airbrush. Some of these can get pretty pricey, and not a good thing. Once you've got your airbrush attached, the next thing you do, this little button that says on and off, just turn it on.
No way.
Right? You're halfway home. So, well, it probably doesn't tell you in the crappy instructions to turn it on, so hopefully common sense kicks in.
I gotta write that down.
See, yeah, you can't just think about it and make it happen. So now your compressor's on, airbrush is hooked up, and definitely hook up your airbrush before you turn the compressor on. Otherwise, it's just gonna keep pumping because it thinks you need air, because the air's not being stopped anywhere. Now, airbrush is on, compressor's running. You want to check this lovely little tank, your air separator. If there's water in there, press up on this little button here on the bottom, and it will shoot out whatever water is sitting in that little reservoir. Now you've got pretty much dry air to run with. Now, water's gone. It's kind of eliminated. You don't really have to worry about that. You're going to want to set your pressure now. And the easiest way to set your pressure is just put your finger on the trigger. And with the dual action airbrush, just push the trigger down. You don't have to pull it back. That's not going to do anything else for you at this point. Push that trigger down and just check for leaks. Make sure that you don't have any leaks here at this connection. You don't have any leaks at this connection. And you don't hear anything weird kind of going on. You hear something weird or some kind of hissing, you either have an issue with your compressor or something just needs to be tightened. Generally, something just needs to be tightened. It's pretty easy to handle. Next thing you want to do is set your air pressure. So you've got your airbrush hooked up, water's gone, and you want to set your air pressure. I know you can't really see the gauge from there, but on here there's a whole bunch of numbers. It's in graduations of 10 psi. Each 10 psi is also known as a bar. So every bar you go up, and you can see the bars on there as well. It depends on what kind of lingo you want to go with, really. So to set your air pressure, this little guy right here, this is your adjusting valve. You pull up on it, it unlocks the valve. And then you can actually start turning this valve up and down. And each time you turn it, take your airbrush, kind of spray it for a couple of seconds, and you can see where the air, you can see where your air pressure comes down to. So I just adjusted this down to 20 psi, which coincidentally is probably the most common air pressure you will spray at. The range between 15 and 25 is pretty much more than what most modelers need, but 20 psi is a good all-around for most things that you do. So airbrush is all set. You've got your air pressure dialed in. You've got your hose hooked up. You got no leaks. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to put paint in this guy. And I can't spray paint here today because of the venue that we're in. Some of the chemicals could actually cause issues with some of the planes and stuff like that. We're not going there. So you got this guy ready to go. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to take your paint. You're going to shake it up like this, or on your shaker. You're literally just going to pour it in as much as you think you need. Once you got that in there, put your cap back on. This cap isn't just pretty, and it's not just to keep your cat's hair from going into this. It's also to help keep your paint from spilling all over the place. And the other cool feature you'll see, which prevents what's called vapor lock, is a little teeny hole in the middle of it. If there is not a hole in it, put a hole in it. That will prevent your paint from actually backing up or kind of getting stuck in airlock in your airbrush, and then nothing comes out. Great, you're spraying, nothing's coming out. What am I doing wrong? It could be something that simple. You may not have that little, or it could be clogged with paint from a prior session. Just put a little pin in there, open it up, and that takes care of any vapor lock issues as well. The other cool thing, which I kind of mentioned one already, is you don't spill your paint for the most part while you're airbrushing. It also keeps dust particles and other things that are floating around while you're spraying from getting in there while you're in your session. All right, so we got paint, cap. Next is going to be your technique. Now, we talked about testing. Make sure you test on whatever you're going to test with, cardboard spoons, screws, extra parts. Test what you want. Test your color, test your primer, test your clear coat. Give those a shot first. Get the feel of however you set up your airbrush with whatever you put in there with your airbrush. You can test how far away you want to spray, how close you want to spray, how far back you want to pull that trigger to meter your paint in and out, and get that feel and the depth of color that you're looking for before you go to your model kit and you make it look like those or those down there. Okay? I've got plenty of oops stories. We can talk about those later. So when you are holding an airbrush, the first thing you want to keep in mind is how you're actually going to spray it. Now, your arm, and I'm going to kind of put my arm up here. When you move your arm, you know your arm goes in an arc motion, spraying in an arc. That's not great. What that does is that gives you an uneven coat across your parts while you're spraying them. Let me grab one of these car bodies. Actually, you know what? I'm going to grab the airbrush and head over here. I'll take it this one. Let's take this one. Trigger style. Okay. So I made all these lovely little car bodies for today. And I started with, this is what your plastic model looks like when it comes out of the box. Generally shiny, unprepped, not really ready for paint, right? Next step, before you get to the airbrush, to make sure that your parts are ready, is you clean it. You clean your parts. What I've done with this kit, you can see the difference where this is shiny and this is not. I've also prepped this surface, gone over it with 1,000 grit sandpaper and then with 1,500 to give it a nice, clean surface. Washed all the dust off of it. And now I've also given my primer coat that I'm going to spray down next a little extra plastic to bite into, so you get a stronger hold with your primer. Okay, so we put primer in this guy. We're going to pretend there's a hose on here, and we're going to pretend we have a spray booth. After your plastic is prepped, you're going to go to your primers. You're going to go over your unit with your primer, and the way you're going to spray, and I have to do this with this hand because I spray with my right. It's weird. When you start, hopefully you can see this. You're going to start with your airbrush away from your part. Start your air, and then start spraying your paint. Then, in a motion, which is called a sweep motion, see how my arm is straight and not going in an arc? You want to move your arm in a sweep motion like this. So you start your air, start your paint before the part. The reason why you do that is it prevents spitting and junk that might be stuck to the end of your airbrush from getting onto your part to begin with. So start it, you got your paint going, sweep across until you're completely past your part, let off of your paint in your air. Okay? That's the basic motion for getting a good even coat across your part. Now, with primer coat, generally 1 to 3 coats of paint is really all you're going to need for your primer coat. So you'll start your air, you've got your paint going, and you're going to go over 1, stop, give it a second, start back up, 2, stop, start back up, 3, stop. You just give yourself a really decent primer coat. This is 3 thin layers of prime coat. It's covered pretty darn well compared to the god-awful latex looking color, or whatever you want to call it. The next step,
You don't wait for it to dry, right? You just want
some people will give it a couple of seconds. Some people are just like, I don't have time, done. I've seen it happen. I know we've probably all been in that kind of situation where you just want something done. So after your primer has dried, based on the manufacturer's recommended drying time, you're going to go to your base color, which is the color that you want your model kit to be, or the colors. You're going to do the same thing that you did with your primer. You're going to start your air, get your paint moving, and go over, stop and start, and just back and forth with your sweep motion. Generally 1 to 5 coats maybe. Really depends on how deep, in this case, of a red that I wanted. I think this was like 4 coats of red. Once you get to that color tone or that look that you're looking for, let this dry completely before moving on to your next coat. Your next coat is your finish or your top coat. Your finish and your top coat seals in all that work that you did to get to that point. Now let's face it, we do a lot of work prepping our plastic. We will do a lot of work getting up to the point where this model looks almost the way I want it. Your top coat is going to finish that up. It's going to lock all that work in. The other thing your top coat is going to do, because of the varieties of top coat that you can get, it's also going to give you an extra, that really bring it home, that extra look, that extra patina. There are glosses, there are semi-glosses, there are mattes, there are flat finishes, there's in-between finishes, there's tinted finishes. Whatever you end up choosing for that, that's your next step. The process is slightly different with your clear coats or your finish coats. So back to your sweeping motion, okay? With your sweeping motion, start your air again, and with your finish coat, you're gonna go over it, you're gonna stop, you're gonna wait 10 to 15 seconds. The reason why you're gonna do that is you are gonna give the rest of your coats that little extra adhesion that's going to make your finish coat come through a little bit brighter. It's also going to help give you a stronger overall complete finish. After you've waited that 10 or 15 seconds, go back over and generally 3 to 5 coats of your finish coat worst case scenario 5 coats, you'll be where I'm at on this little guy here, okay? Then it's time to let that just dry. Let it dry, again, based on the manufacturer's recommendation, and based on the types of paint that you're using. But rule of thumb, my personal rule of thumb is, once that finish coat is on there, I stick it in a box like this lovely box right here, my WB Mason copier paper box, and I let it dry inside that box. Prevents dust from getting in on the finish. And I'll let it sit in there for 2 days. Just let it completely dry out, let it gas out, let it do its thing. So you've got all your finishes on there. You're all ready to go, pretty much. The next thing you do is you come to model clubs like us, Patcon. You spend time down there with all the rest of us Goombas doing all kinds of fun stuff and whatever, and showing off our work and showing off our mistakes and talking about this and that and buying way too many model kits like we always do. Yeah. But really, all that really brings you here. I've got a whole bunch of examples. Got this little example right here is literally a before and after. This is what this kit looked like, just straight up plastic. This is what you can do with it. You know, and I've got different types of finishes, different types of airbrush techniques on this little guy. I think I used 3 or 4 different techniques on this that we didn't talk about, that you'll learn more as you're testing things out. I also have another before and after. Those of you who are familiar with Gundam, I have what's called an RX-78-5. This is the kit straight out of the box, just has a little panel liner on it, right? Nothing special. There's 0 paint on that. It's got stickers on it. Hate stickers. This is what it looks like when you get comfortable and you can start to get creative and try new things. So that's my before, and 4 years later, that's my after on that kit. So I spent a lot of time in between kind of really honing that. Now, I know some of you weren't here early on, but the very first model kit that I actually airbrushed once I felt I could do it is on this table. Does anybody have an idea which one it is?
The Lotus.
Lotus? Okay. Anybody else?
The blue one? Blue.
You're right. Yeah, it's the blue one. That blue one looks really good from far away. No. When you get up close to the blue one, I loved that kit. That's probably my favorite. If you're into Gundam, that's my favorite mobile suit. Is a Shin Matsunaga. And that's a master grade version. I also did a metal build up on it with metal parts, so I placed a lot of plastic parts with an upgraded metal part kit. But if you get close to it, you can see where I oversprayed, I had runs, a lot of the things that I talked about, I didn't know. I made so many little screw ups on that. I got scratches all over it. That was my learning kit. So I just learning from that guy, my mistakes, I graduated into so many other variations and patterns and different things that I can do. Anybody wants to come up and take a look at these, certainly can. I also have done a couple of these bodies. This was done with masking tape, striping, and things like that. So different things you can do as you move on. This car body here, I did just a nice variety of water slides before I did the final finish. So you can kind of see what that looks like. So you can get some ideas and get some inspiration when you're ready to actually try this thing out. Also got some freehand stuff. My camo was not great free-handed, but I am slowly getting better. This is kind of a maybe tiger stripe if you want to get there. I'm not the aficionado on that kind of stuff yet, so Tom Warchal would kick my ass if I talked about that. Sorry about the language. So really, that's those are the basics. The one thing I would love to stress: don't stress out about it. Don't stress out about it. Mix your paint, throw it in the airbrush, and just go. Just try it out. Throw a mask on.
I think one of the things that throws me off is the cleanup of the airbrush.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So to me, that's the factor that I haven't used mine yet. I'm afraid of tearing it apart, whether I clean it right.
If I might chime in.
Makes sense.
If I might chime in.
Go right ahead.
I used mine, but it's all thrown now. I've cleaned it out. I've put stuff in. It blows, but when I put paint in, the paint just won't come out. I don't know if it's clogged. If it's,
Do you have the airbrush here with you?
no, unfortunately.
Okay. So what I'll do after the class, I will give you my information. If anybody has questions, I will also have a bullet point setup of this as well. So we'll just hit all the basic bullet points that I covered so you have kind of a guide. With cleaning, I'm glad you brought that up because I brought cleaning tools, all the basic stuff, depending on whatever situation you may run into. First and foremost, lint-free shop towels. You can buy these at any hardware store, Home Depot, any good reputable paint store. But lint-free shop towels. They tear off. You can use them for dropping your parts onto, for wiping things out, for catching spills, the whole 9 yards. When you start cleaning your airbrush, again, go back to the manufacturer recommended cleaners. If you're using Vallejo or Model Air, it's going to tell you to use this stuff, this specifically. This is specifically formulated to clean out that style paint, so forth and so on. Tamiya has their airbrush cleaner. This stuff is like battery acid, by the way. The Mr. Tool Cleaner, which is, I think, probably the best all-around lacquer cleaner for your airbrush, tends to work really well. It's also very nice to the seals in your airbrush. There are other off-market brands that I would not recommend using because they could eat the seals in your airbrush. And we'll talk later about how you cleaned it out. It might be as simple as changing your cleaner.
Is there an easy way to know when to change your NIOSH filters?
Yes. So on your NIOSH filters, every filter will have a lock date or a use by date either on the filter or directly on the box. From the time that you actually open it. The NIOSH filters inside come in a sealed bag. So you can kind of gauge how long you have on them. The other way to gauge it is when you really start to smell something coming through, it's probably time to change it, or you may need an adjustment on your baskets, which is pretty simple to do. No, you're very welcome.
Now, when do you use the cleaning models? I see behind the computer.
Grab the airbrush. The basic cleaning in between each time that you're spraying your paint, you want to take your recommended cleaner, and I'll just kind of use this as a sample. Take your recommended cleaner. You can take your pipette and shoot some cleaner inside of your airbrush. Or in this case, I got this handy little cap, you just twist it and kind of pour it in. Put that in there, and you're going to do what's called a backflow technique. And there's two ways to do this particular technique. There's a cap, a plastic cap that can go over the tip of your airbrush. You put that over, and what it does is it prevents air from blowing away from the airbrush. You start your air, and then all you really need to do is have your air running. It forces the cleaner down into the needle, but because the air is trying to force back, it also pushes air bubbles and agitates the cleaner inside of your airbrush to give it a much better clean. So generally, when you change your paints, when you change from one paint to another paint, you should definitely do that. If you're done for the day, you definitely need to give it at least a basic cleaning. I would recommend getting into what's called a complete breakdown, which really isn't that hard to do. It's intimidating. If you don't follow the instructions, just take a quick look at it. The Mr. Hobby airbrushes that I use, they have a really decent set of instructions. You kind of go by the pictures, or you can use a translator because it's in Japanese. But it's very easy to break down most of your airbrushes. Do a thorough cleaning of the needle itself inside. Actually, I can. this little teeny guy right here. You'll be amazed at how much paint actually gets caked on this little needle. Safest and easiest way to clean your needle are these lovely little swabs. And I use these little swabs with a wood stick. These happen to be for cleaning guns. You can get on Amazon. Again, like 500 or 1,000 to a box, depending on how crazy you want to get. But with your needle, dip it into your thinner, your airbrush cleaner, and recommend grabbing one of these little guys. Put some cleaner in these little stainless steel pans here. Take your swab, soak it, and then take your cotton bud and literally just go up the whole entire needle while you're spinning the needle, and also spin this guy because it's going to get dirty. Spin it. But what you don't want to do, you see I'm going only in one direction. You don't want to go like this. What happens when you do that, when you come back down on your downstroke, if you went past the needle and you come back and you catch that, you're going to bend the tip. That's a whole nother life story I can get into. I can teach you how to fix them. I can tell you what kind of tools you can get, blah, 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 blah. Moral of the story, when you're cleaning your needle, only go in one direction that goes away from a sharp point on that needle. That's the safest and easiest way to clean this. Once you're done wiping it, grab your towel, nestle your needle in the towel, and as you're pulling it, just kind of twist it, and that pulls any of the additional residue off of your needle. Your needle's clean. Your airway inside has a basic clean to it by just doing your flush outs afterwards. And you'll know once that's flushed out, by the way, because the fluid that sits inside, you may have to go and put your cleaner in there 2 to 3 times. But the thinner that comes out of it is going to be clear. You're not going to see any more color. You're not going to see any metallic flake if you're using metallics, which is kind of a nightmare at some points. But it's very workable. So that's kind of the quick basics on cleaning. I can get into a complete breakdown. I've got all the tools with me. This little tool here is a needle valve removal tool, which takes the very needle inside, or not the needle, but the little jet that the needle kind of sits into. This little tool is used to attach that, and you can literally take that piece out. You can clean the whole inside right here of your airbrush with these little guys. Yep, so again, you've got this little guy here. You just kind of dip it in there, get this nice and wet, and you can just gently push that guy back and forth inside, or kind of get in there, just kind of turn it a little bit. And then you're going to want to flush it again anyways, because this is going to agitate and move a lot of stuff up. Yeah, go right ahead.
Given the toxicity of some of these things, but also the really small amounts we tend to use, do we need to, can these just go down the sink for the most part, or do they have to get taken to a chemical disposal place?
Glad you asked. 2 things. This guy right here is an airbrush spray. It's an airbrush cleaning bottle. It's got a nice little hole in it. You stick the tip of your airbrush in there, and you can squirt all your dirty cleaner into that. It's also got a little filter in there so that you're not smelling a lot. It tends to filter out a lot of that smell and some of the overspray that kicks back. The other thing that I keep with me is this old Cafe maybe Columbia coffee container that my wife used to buy years and years ago. I've probably had this thing for 15 years through all the shit that I've done. But this is great if your cup and everything is really dirty and you have a lot of dirty fluid inside. I'll just pour it in this jar. Now to answer your question, a lot of that stuff will evaporate, but you could put it out in an area where it's just kind of naturally evaporate. Some people will pour it down the drain. Not the greatest thing to be pouring down your drain if you're using anything other than latex, honestly. I've had times where I've just taken it, sat it out back, and make sure it's not in direct sun, because some of the stuff is flammable too. And just kind of crack the top, prevent anything from kind of falling into it, and a lot of it will evaporate out. I know people that stuff these with paper towels. They'll pull the paper towels out and they'll just kind of lay them out on cardboard in the yard and whatever, just let them evaporate that way. And you have an empty container and you throw the towels away after they're dried out. No, you're welcome. Good question. This is glass. The lid is plastic. They don't really make metal lids anymore for this kind of stuff, but yeah, I've always been accustomed to using glass. I like how heavy it is. Yeah, pickle jars are perfect. The mason jars, yeah, right down the. You can even get the mason jars with the little twisty caps too. This one is glass as well. Mr. Hobby makes a glass style. It's nice and heavy, so it tends not to want to tip over. It's good for holding a lot of that residue. With this little guy, you actually do have to put about 1/4 inch of water in there, and it actually helps catch a lot of paint particles too from floating around. You can see all the lovely paint that's caked up in there over time. And then lubricant. Lubricant is really good for keeping all your parts moving and operating, especially with a trigger style. There's a big amount of moving parts in a trigger style just because of its design. A little bit of grease goes a long way in actuating the trigger and keeping your seals nice and clean and working, free flowing. Yeah, that's pretty much everything. Questions?
Change your cleaning back to the paint.
Yeah.
20 pressure. I've heard people say, well, you can go down to 15 for
Yes.
like a metallic or a metal paint. You know, is that, or just stick with 20 or
Recommendation when you're starting, start off with 20. Test it. If you feel you need to change it, by all means, change it. What you're doing on your canvas, you're doing it your way. You want it to look a certain way. I reduce my pressures when I'm spraying colored clears, like this lovely pink right here, which I have on several of those models. Not this particular element, but colored clears. I'll reduce down to 15 psi because it gives me more control with a clear that's colored, and it also makes it easier for me to mitigate the depth of color that I want to put on there. Because it's easy to over darken with a colored clear when you're actually using a colored clear. And I do have that kit in the middle. I kind of over darkened that. When you get up close to it, it looks like it's a dark green and a dark blue. That was not my intention to begin with. It was supposed to be lighter, but I didn't really regulate my pressure enough with that. Metallics, yes, without a doubt. If you're getting into metallics, reduce your air pressure. You'll have more control with it.
Now, my Grex 350 comes with an option of a top that you can screw on the side or the cup on top. So to begin with, I should probably just go with the cup on top.
Yeah, so the cup on top, glad you asked that question because I missed that. Other types of airbrush, there's a side draft or there's a side cup. There's also one that has suction. It sucks paint up from underneath the airbrush, which are less commonly used in the hobby. Most common is your gravity feed or that cup that sits on the top of your airbrush, which gravity obviously takes your paint and pulls it right down into the paint reservoir and you're good to go. Sorry, what was your question?
Better with the top cup or the draft, the one that pulls.
Personally, better with the top cup. There are other issues that you can run into with the side draft or the suction style. And I honestly feel you have more control with it. Again, that's my personal opinion. Other people, they'll use the side cup because they say that they tend to have more view on what they're spraying. And I could understand that argument. Same thing with the bottom draft. But those two also have their own challenges, especially with the
For the test spoons, does it matter if they're white, black, any other color? Does it matter?
Not at all. I spray both. got white and black.
These
Doesn't
all
really
come to
matter.
show the results easier with a white spoon.
No. So when you're running your test spoon, act like it's your model part. Spray your primer, quicksand or however you clean it, just like you would your parts. Cover it with your primer, let it dry. Cover it with your base coat or the color that you want your model kit to be. Once that's dry, if you want to test a clear coat or whatever, or a finish coat, do that too. But treat your spoon as if you're actually spraying your model kit, so you will get the closest or most true result on your spoon. You get comfortable with that result before you go to your model.
I like to do at least a couple because the primer and the clear.
Yeah.
Then, because clear coats are so temperamental that I try a couple different clear coats to see if any is going to affect that spoon before I put it on the bottom.
That's a great way to test. And then you have that sample to go back on. You can put a little piece of tape on there.
Which I do.
You can write exactly what you did. And then you have this really cool catalog later on down the road of all these things that you've done. You also have a catalog of all the screw-ups. Keep the screw-up spoons. I have come across some screw-up spoons that I thought were really screwed up. I ended up learning some really weird new techniques that look just completely different than anything you see out there. Keep those too. The ones where the paint literally peels off, don't keep those. No, not at all. Go ahead.
Do you ever recommend any manufacturers for the airbrush?
My personal favorite are the Mr. Hobby airbrushes, the Patcon series. Their price range is very reasonable. They have very high quality airbrushes. They are very easy to break down and clean. There are several other brands out there that are very good. Badger makes a really nice line of airbrushes. Iwata, Rex, Posh. There's a few others that are kind of
Pretty much on that same